we can, with quite certainty, say that over the last while we have seen an increase in gun and gang violence in and around Cape Town, particularly on the Cape Flats, particularly in areas where working class families live. There have been plenty of criticisms labelled at the national government, the South African police. There have been plenty of criticisms that labelled at the city, local government. But 62 million rand has been spent since 2016 on all sorts of technology that has tried to isolate and identify hotspot areas. Technology like cameras, drones, ShotSpotter technology. Now, researcher Grant Oosterwyk, who's a lecturer and PhD candidate at UCT, he's been examining the efficacy, the ethics, and even the social implications of deploying gunshot detection systems, particularly ShotSpotter, in parts of Cape Town affected by gang and gun violence. He joins me now on the line. Good morning, Grant. Really appreciate your time.
Good morning,
the city says we have this technology that is being used. We can identify where gunshots are taking place. We then pass that information onto law enforcement and the South African police service on the ground, and I'll particularly focus on SAPS. We pass on this information. We cannot help it if SAPS doesn't respond to the information that we give them. Grant?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the listeners as well. Well, I think it's quite clear that we understand that this has been a challenge for years, right? The point here is that there's been a narrative created that, yes, to a certain degree, a lot of things takes place in terms of the challenges in terms of gun violence, and of course this idea that the two parties, as an example, so this will be the city of Cape Town as an example, and also in this case many of the lead officers, Metro Police and SAPS are typically in a way not really, they need additional help, right? And one of the things that they are typically looking at, as you said, is deployment of ShotSpotter, right? Now, again, the work that we are currently, my work specifically looks at the role of technology in addressing complex social issues. So I look at critical research, in this case, gun violence. So over the last few years, of course, we've been specifically looking at ShotSpotter. You will notice some of the papers that I've shared, which we understand. Yes, there's a view that it detects gunfire through what they refer to as acoustic sensors, and they are used in some of our most effective communities. What my research specifically looks at is this community conversation that suggests that, yes, while the technology can help in coordinating, the data points, as I call it, it doesn't by itself address the deeper causes of violence.
Because you argue that residents already know where the shootings are happening, and the technology doesn't appear to add new insight to the realities of people living in these areas.
Yeah. So one of the main things that specifically happened in the USA, as an example, was that there was quite a bit of reports on false positives, right? Specifically, the mere fact that you have firecrackers, as an example, you have car backfiring happening in the community, as an example. So there are many false positives, and to a certain degree, cities often just don't have the capacity, as you said rightfully so, to respond to that data point only, right? So how do citizens typically feel about them? So some of the articles, some of the media that I've specifically looked at, various interviews that I've seen, it shows that the locations are often concentrated on I would say certain communities, and so we entrench to a certain degree more bias, right? So it does operate at more of as a deterrent to reduce crime in the community. But later on, as an example, things such as bolstering responses, as an example, we are asking, what's the point of pinpointing the shot if you can't be there to really address the underlying challenges?
62 million rand spent over the last 9 years on technology. Does it appear proactive, or but also avoiding the structural reform. You argue that the answer to gang and gun violence in Cape Town, it's not just a security issue, it's not just a tech issue, it's a social issue. So, as a information technology specialist, and I'm sure you appreciate gadgets and tech, you're even arguing less with the drone technology, more with the social workers, green spaces, and social interventions on the ground.
Yeah. So, and sometimes to, as you mentioned, I am a tech person, right? So when we look at specific technologies, we need to a certain degree, look with a critical eye as well, right? So as an example, I myself, I grew up on the Cape Flats. So sorry, I grew up in Altus River. I'm a victim of gun violence, so I've seen many challenges growing up as a youngster in those communities. I'm also a son of a former retired police officer. Now, communities like Manenberg, Hanover Park, Alces River, Nyanga, uh, as I mentioned earlier, they are living with these daily challenges, and we understand that. But people are more desperate for safety and real solutions. Now, the one thing that we need to also consider is use cases outside of South Africa. So we see the challenges of gunfire within Chicago in the USA, within New York, and over 100 cities has actually deployed ShotSpotter, right? And we are seeing some of the challenges. The mayor of the USA, of Chicago, as an example, has specifically a number of months ago, they have stopped the contract completely because ShotSpotter in Chicago did not work. Now, a few weeks ago, we found out that they've actually extended, but there's also currently a lawsuit happening between the provider of ShotSpotter in this case, where they are basically pushing the city of Chicago to continue the contract. Now, what we are saying here is that yes, we identify many of the current initiatives that the city is currently doing. We appreciate that, but we are saying that collecting data points is just not enough, right? And the challenges of coordination amongst the communities is very much an opportunity that has been missed for a very long time, right? So what we are saying is that we cannot have a repeat, as an example, of what happened during the major challenges in the 90s, specifically related to gun violence. We are at a point where we need to be able to say that safety must come first, and social investments should be done correctly instead of not listening to the voices that are currently on the ground. We are seeing it right
explain
now.
to me, I'm going to have to pressure you for 90 seconds, but can you explain to me how would data points, if we know that an area like Manenberg has a higher frequency of gunshots, let's say, than table view, for example. And the data that is collected points, okay, there have been 90 gunshots fired in Manenberg this weekend, and one in table view, for example.
Yeah.
You say that these data points then reproduce the old patterns of exclusion or echoing apartheid era spatial and policing inequalities. But if the reality is more data of shots being fired in Manenberg than in Tableview, that is simply just the reality. How can the data then reinforce some of those old patterns of exclusion?
Yeah, thank you for that. So what I mean by that is that yes, ShotSpotter generates very useful data, right? But data isn't alone in itself, does not necessarily contribute to any form of prevention. So the real measure, in my view, of success is whether or not residents truly feel safer and gun violence actually decreases tremendously.
And so you argue that even with a multi-million rand investment in technology over the last 9 years, has it met the metric of people feeling safer? And the answer, you would argue, would be no.
I would say that would be no, yeah. The evidence from my research specifically suggests that the impact has been uneven, right? And communities remain anxious constantly. And of course, skeptical as well, because we need to consider the trust issue. So I'm asking the question, what does a data point mean to a mother from Elsies River or to a mother from Hanover Park that has just lost her son or her daughter due to gun violence. And those are some of the things that we really need to ask ourselves. Are we using technology as a silver bullet? And if we are, we might have to rethink the entire strategy of how to really curb the challenges of gun violence on the Cape Flats.
Grant Oosterwyk, really appreciate your time. Lecturer, PhD candidate at UCT Information Systems Department. He's asking whether there's efficacy, ethics, whether there's a social impact when deploying a technology like ShotSpotter in Cape Town's gang and gun affected areas. Really appreciate your time, Grant.